Hello, we are going to talk about citrus trees today because there is barely a backyard without one, and with the right care they can be some of the most productive and rewarding trees to have in the garden. However, they are prone to a number of ailments which many of us have had to deal with at one time or another. So we have invited our resident expert Keith Edwards back into the garden to discuss some of these issues and to help us with some tips on how to overcome them. Welcome back, Keith.
Thank you.
What are the most important things that we should be doing to maintaining a healthy citrus tree?
Well, there's a few things that we need to be looking at with our citrus. Citrus are incredibly heavy feeders.
Yes.
Their root systems are all just underneath the surface. So if the ground dries out, that impacts the citrus tree itself. Other things to take into consideration is where the drip line of the citrus tree is. Mm-hmm. So this one here, the drip line is coming out over to here, and therefore there's competition with the grass.
Right.
So the grass is taking away nutrients that should otherwise be going towards the health and well-being of the citrus tree in the fruiting and the flowering.
So we should narrow the tree then to bring it into the drip line?
We should. We can do two things. We can narrow the tree in, pull it in so that it's more manageable, or we can increase the size of the garden bed underneath it.
Yeah. So Keith, is it true that the first thing we should do is test the pH level of the soil?
That's probably the most important thing that you'll ever do in a garden, because every single plant reacts differently to the pH in that soil. So citrus trees, for instance, what we're looking at here today, are trees that require a pH in the 5.5 to 6 range. That means that all the elements that it requires are available to the plant at that stage. So what I've done is I've gone quickly around the garden with a little probe here, and I've got some soil samples. I'll put them in the bucket here, I'm going to mix them up, and then I'm going to put them into this little testing kit here. We're going to put the liquid on, and then we're going to put the barium on afterwards. So this liquid will then just set out. Just work it up a little bit like that. That's all it really requires. And this is the barium, which is a white powder, and this is reactive to the level of the pH level. Yeah, exactly. So if we look at this, you can actually see straight away that this is starting to colour up into the green range. So the longer it sits there, you can see that it's now pulling into about 5.5, which is perfect for the citrus trees.
That is fantastic. Isn't that good news?
Things to look out for citrus are what we have here. You can see that we've got a yellowing effect going through the leaves here. And that yellowing effect is a deficiency in the soil, and I'm guessing at this stage that it's possibly lime that's missing from the feeding regime of this particular tree. So when a tree starts to feel unwell, that's when pest and disease starts to get into it. So if you have a little look over here, I can just pick this leaf off here. You see this black spot?
I do.
That's a scale.
Ah, that's what
So that is the start of a whole heap of other problems that are going to come with the citrus tree, because it exudes, it sucks the sap out and exudes out through the back of its skin a little syrup, and that syrup is sugary, so that attracts ants, and the ants come up the tree, walk over it to get the sugar, and then walk back down, and then you get sooty mould. It's a natural thing that's going to occur on a plant that is not at its peak.
So that comes back to fertilising.
For fertilising,
soil,
feeding,
etc.
Exactly.
Watering.
Yep.
This is a magnificent broadfork. Please tell me where we get it and why it's so good.
This tool is handmade by a company called FD Ryan here in Heidelberg, Victoria. And this tool is designed to get down deep into the soil by rocking it down, and you use these great big handles to pull it back. It lifts the soil underneath. It allows air and worms and everything else to get into the hard, compacted soil. And this we will use then with the holes to get some organic fertiliser down into it, of which we'll water it all in.
So Keith, what products should I be using to fertilise?
Anything that is organic and natural.
So can you recommend anything in particular?
What I have here in my hand.
Oh my goodness, he has it here?
This is the Nutrod range. It's called Giganic. It is for fruit and
citrus. This is what we need.
So this is perfectly balanced all the way through to provide the best elements for feeding this particular plant.
About a cupful per quarter of the tree for this size plant. And then just water it in. Keith, what can we do about citrus gall wasp? Because I know that is a real problem for many people and it can spread dreadfully.
It can indeed. Citrus gall wasp is endemic to Australia. It's an indigenous bug. So that Europe doesn't have this problem with their citrus trees. This is only here in Australia because we actually have finger limes, which is our only form of citrus, and they live on the finger lime. So when finger limes became just so prolific, everyone wanted a finger lime in their garden. The nurserymen went out and got cuttings and so forth, and the citrus gall wasp came along with that and then spread out through every single citrus tree.
Very interesting.
It's only about a 3 mil wasp. It lays its eggs in here, which then pupate. The actual citrus itself tends to create this gall around it, so it's losing a lot of sap flow and so forth. Yeah. But when the time is right, it will come out of the little gall here. It mates, and then it literally flies about that far and infects it into the new growth, and this whole process will colonise it all the way up. And this just depletes the tree's energy because it's got to have these sticky little mongrels inside that are pulling all the energy out of the tree and into the little bugs.
How do we stop it?
When you see it, you cut it. You don't then put it in the compost bin, you put it into a bag and into the bin.
So cut the branches back so just below where the gall is?
Yeah, because they're going up the stems, not down.
Okay.
And then you give it a good feed. Yeah. You need to get some rock dust into it to help boost those sugar levels and so forth. Yes. And pest disease will not worry about these citrus trees again.
We have 2 kumquat trees here, Keith. Mm-hmm. So potted citrus, do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, just make sure that they are once again fed on a seasonal basis with an organic fertiliser, and this is most important in pots, that it is organic. Right. If you use a citrus fertiliser that is derived as a soluble salt, it will burn every single tiproot that is in the pot itself, and that will just kill the tree. If you're unsure about how much fertiliser you put in there, halve it. Less is more. Sure. The other things that need consideration is that potting mix by essence is an organic matter, and it breaks down over a period of time and it loses enormous amounts of goodness that leach through it and wash out into the soil.
What about changing the potting mix or repot it? How often should we repot?
You should repot probably every 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
And the best thing to do there is to saturate the pot first of all, pull it out and go up another size, at least another size up in terms of the size of the pots.
Okay.
And then lots of good quality potting mix, and it's got to be a potting mix that is specifically set for citrus.
Something I've always wondered about potting is the drainage hole that is at the bottom. What do you cover that with? A pebble, paper towel, what?
No, you don't put a paper towel on there because a paper towel will rot. And that will tend to block up the hole. The hole's there to get rid of the excess moisture that goes through the pot. So what I tend to do is I tend to put a layer of screenings or scoria, some sort of a rock that's not going to break down on the bottom first, and then I put the good quality potting mix and build it up, and then put your plant into the middle of that.
Fabulous. Great tips. You mentioned mulch, and we haven't discussed mulch either, and that's so important because there are certain mulches I imagine you wouldn't recommend.
There are. So you wouldn't use any that has been derived from the trees that have been cut round through, underneath the power lines, because all that stuff is just basically carbon. So that's robbing the soil of goodness. You want something that has got good nitrogen and other things in it that's going to break down and feed the plant.
Such as?
My favourite is another Nutrog product called Who Flung Dung.
I have heard of Who Flung Dung. I love that name. That's Nutrog again.
It's brilliant.
Okay, so and that can be found at most nurseries?
Most of the big warehouses have got all that Who Flung Dung or all the Nutrog range, and it's just an absolutely brilliant product.
I currently use pea straw mulch. Is that?
Pea straw mulch is terrific. It's a plant that's been pulling nitrogen out of the air and putting it back into itself, and therefore it's great to put on the soil.
Okay, so that's not too bad.
It's a fabulous thing.
But even better is Who Flung Dung.
Who Flung Dung.
Keith, that was invaluable information, definitely to me, and I'm sure to many people who really want to make the best out of their citrus trees. And people, don't forget the Nutrog. This is fantastic stuff. I can't wait to get it on my citrus trees. See you next time. Bye.